Hey, everybody. We are here with Ali Kriegsman, author of the incredible book, The Raise. Ali, I just want to say, oh, you got your copy too.
Of
Amazing. I just want to
course.
say that I am impressed not only by the quality of the thriller that you wrote, but also the quality of every single part of this book, from the cover, which I know that you did art direction for. And so I just want to hear kind of from you a little bit about you with your author journey and what it took for The Raise to be real. But let's just get started and kind of hear a little bit from you. Not only were you an author of this great book, but I know that you have a background as a founder. So if you can tell everybody a little bit more about you for those of you who aren't familiar.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation and meet everyone who's joining. So lovely to meet you, and thank you for taking the time to tune in. I'm Ali Kriegsman. I am the author of The Raise. And as Amy mentioned, I had my first book traditionally published with Abrams in 2021. It's called How to Build a Goddamn Empire. And that's kind of where my journey begins. I started my entrepreneurial journey when I was 24. I started a retail technology company called Bulletin. It did not start as a retail technology company. It started out as a shoppable newsletter, like predating Substack, which is crazy. We were powering it through Squarespace. We then opened our own pop-up markets, which then turned into retail stores. And our kind of tech journey began in late 2019. And that version of the business we sold in 2022. So I was in the entrepreneurial trenches for about 7.5 years, like pushing that boulder up a cliff, having no idea what was going to happen, if we were going to exit. But we were always growing and pivoting in response to what our community needed. And it was such an amazing boot camp, and just like learning to do hard things and learning that, like, in order for big things to happen, you have to make them happen yourself. Which brings me to The Raise. So after I sold Bulletin in 2022, we exited to this big tech company, big public company. As a small technology company, I just felt like that big public company environment wasn't right for me. I had been kind of tinkering with The Raise. Why are all the lights turning off? Sorry, we've
There's a
been dealing
ghost in
with
the
this
room
since
with
the
you.
pre-show.
No, I always think when lights are turning on and off, I'm like, oh, yes, the spirit of the deceased is here with us. I actually went to Florence earlier this year and I went to see like an energy healer, and she banished all of the ghosts in my house. And then the light bulb stopped flickering after I did that. So it's truly a gift to have the ghosts be banished from your house.
I hope that we just banish some ghosts. I'm so sorry. I'm with
No
a friend.
worries.
I'm at a friend's right now because I was rushing home from a meeting, worried I wouldn't make it in time. So I like urgently called and was like, I gotta get on my Substack live. I'm like sitting in her bed. Okay, ghosts be gone. So anyway, I had been tinkering with The Raise. And I had actually finished the manuscript. I was working on it while I was building my business, like in the middle of exiting the company. And I decided to kind of go back in, do a lot of more work on it, and just like left my business that I had started so I could make The Raise as undeniable as possible. Um, Ultimately, though, it was denied. I went to market with my agents at CAA at the end of 2023, and publishers didn't want to publish my book. The book is, I think, really special. It's kind of genre bending. It's a mix of a true thriller, like you're on the edge of your seat. If you go to the Goodreads reviews, people are like, I read this in 48 hours. I had to find out what happened. Like, I couldn't believe the twist at the end. So it has a lot of those true thriller elements, but it's also a coming of age story for Alexis, the protagonist, who is bringing you on the journey through the entire book. The book is told through her point of view. And I think publishers just didn't know where to fit it on their list. They didn't know how to market it. And so I was really disappointed. My agents and I were debating if we should go back to market and pitch to a new kind of tranche of editors and give it new life that way. But I took some time off. I actually took a year to decide what to do because I was so disappointed. My ego was so bruised. I couldn't believe it. All of us were like shell shocked. And then I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm an entrepreneur. I have a really clear view of how I want to launch this book. I also had goals for adaptation, and I had a vision for like kind of a movie style trailer I wanted to do for the book to hopefully accomplish those goals. And so I just kind of put my founder hat back on, and I was like, like, screw traditional publishing for right now. I feel really called to bring this to market on my own and see what I can do on my own. And I felt like self-publishing had a bit of stink to it. You know, it kind of feels like this second-rate way to launch your book. It feels like what people do when they get rejected, or like I wrote a Substack about it. It feels like what your scary uncle does, you know, and he talks about his like book of poems about vegetables like at Thanksgiving. And you're like, oh my God. But I wanted to elevate self publishing, and that became my new goal. And that's what I set out to do in 2025. So that's what brought me to doing the raise by myself. And I accomplished so many wonderful things once I decided to do that and set my mind to it. And I'm so happy that I did it. I have no regrets.
Yeah, no, I think that was really inspiring. And I think that one thing that feels just so unique is that I feel like we don't really get a lot of thrillers set in like the high powered startup world of the modern era. And when I was reading The Raise, I was like, this feels so fresh and new and unlike anything else that is on bookshelves. And I thought that that was really unique. What about, because you were so kind of in this world of like you have high powered like startups and tech companies and having to have like a whole company on your shoulders and kind of navigating the tech world and the startup world, what was it like kind of being in that world and then deciding to write in that world? Like what was you kind of your rules for yourself of like what you wanted to take from real life, what you wanted to like how you wanted to approach fictionalizing it, or kind of we're all told to write what we know, but also like what were some of the things that you took a lot of leeway on, or you kind of changed when you were approaching, kind of documenting this world?
Yeah. So it's interesting you talk about documenting this world, because I did that the entire 7.5 years that I was in the trenches building my business. I did Y Combinator, which is this very prestigious accelerator program in Silicon Valley. There's a version of it in the book called G Calibrator. And I took notes through that entire experience, because you're meeting like such brilliant but also ridiculous people. Like I remember me and my co-founder Alana were getting advice from one of like the visiting partners in YC, and he was eating spinach like straight up out of a vat, like one of the vats of spinach you get at the grocery store, like what they come in at the grocery store, like just raw dog, like piling spinach into his mouth while trying to give us advice and telling us that we should have a cardboard cutout of Justin Bieber outside our store in order to attract customers. And like odd things like that are constantly happening, where I kept like so many journals. And so in that way, I wanted to bring the like surrealism and ridiculousness of some of these characters and being in this world to the page 1,000,000%. So that shows up in certain characters, like some of the side characters, some of the investors, Gordon, and a lot of his qualities are an amalgamation of some of these real characteristics that I took note of while I was on my actual journey. The second thing I really wanted to make true to life in the book was a lot of the pressure and a lot of the like the intensity of how like crazy these stakes feel, like how do or die it can feel. But what I wanted to kick up a notch like was the stakes, right? It's like everything should feel really intense, but when you write fiction, you want to exaggerate everything 1,000-fold. So, like, there's a death at Burning Man. There's this like secret hum of potential fraud at the company that she has to uncover. That never happened to me, but I feel like with fiction, you have to increase the saturation on everything so that the reader like understands the emotions you're trying to convey, but it's just like getting dialed up all the way. I think another thing I really wanted to imbue from my real life experience was like the complexity and the texture of so many of these relationships. Like I had a real co-founder. I started working with her when I was 24, and it was such a transformative and beautiful relationship. And that's at the heart of this book. I mean, I always say like The Raise is a thriller, but it is also like very Sally Rooney-esque or Elena Ferrante-esque in how it, talks about female friendship and codependency. And I think that that's something a lot of women deal with in their 20s, where they're structuring their identity in response to someone else's identity, or they're so uncertain of who they are that they feel like they can only figure out who they are in reaction to or by modeling off of someone else that they admire. And I think we all do that. Like, we all do that when we're like shopping each other's shop my links. We all do that when we're like, looking at an influencer's apartment and modeling our apartment after theirs. And so I wanted to bring that theme into the book for my real life because I was like that. Like, I was very codependent. I was very lost in many ways. And I wanted to like make Alexis that way. But again, like times a million thousand percent. I think the things that are important to keep in mind when you're drawing from real life, but writing fiction is what I said. Like, you want to increase the stakes enough. I'm trying to increase the brightness. You want to always just trying to figure out the light in this room. You want to increase the stakes enough so that you feel like you're getting a really tasty, propulsive, immersive. You're giving a really tasty, propulsive, immersive experience to the reader. I'm not like a slice of life writer. I'm definitely like I try to be very commercial and very intense and very propulsive. And I think the second thing is like you don't want to hurt anyone. You don't want to offend anyone. Like, in exploring the themes between Alexis and Darcy, in exploring the themes between the women and the investors, like, I'm not giving any identifiable traits being like, this was our investor, this is me and Alana. Like, it's not. I think it's important to get creative enough where you're telling a net new interesting story that lets those themes come to life in a really new special way. It shouldn't feel like I'm sitting a reader down being like, oh my God, this is what happened to me and my co-founder, this is what happened to me and my investor. Because that's not what art is, that's not what creating is, that's just like gossiping or venting. So I think that's the second thing is like make sure you're making something new because that's why art is fun and beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. And in the chat, Brianna mentioned this is so inspiring. And I agree. Like, I think that what is so inspiring about your journey is that with fiction, like you've been able to portray such an emotional truth, and pulling elements of the world. And I'm based in San Francisco, so seeing you write in the tech startup world, I'm like, ah, yes, this
Yeah.
feels very real. Knowing that like you did have to dial it up to 1,000, but I think that the thing that felt very true was the emotional dynamics. I think that you captured that really well. What do you feel like was your writing process for this book? Because I know you've previously published a nonfiction book before this. What in writing The Raise was your writing process like? What were some of the like? Did you like sit yourself down and write all day? Like, did you have like a way that you structured kind of approaching fiction different than nonfiction? Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah. So the themes came to me first. I have like a diary entry or journal entry where it was February 2020. And I was like, these are the themes. Like, they came over me. I was like, it's this, it's this, it's this, it's ambition, it's codependence, it's daddy issues, it's this, it's this. And then from there, I do what we all do. Like, I had my early mornings, my morning pages, my walks, and I kind of just let it come to me. I don't think I had the ambition yet of writing a novel. And then as I kept letting it percolate by the end of 2020, I traveled and I was on a flight. I was on Xanax and red wine, and just the opening scene where Alexis is at the wig store just came to me. And I remember I sat up and I was like, here we go. Like, it's starting now. And I wrote the first 3,000 words on that flight. And that's when I knew, like, okay, I'm writing a book. And then from there, I drafted all of the kind of character dynamics and the plot as best I could in like a big outline. And then I realized that I didn't know what I was doing with plot. One of my friends at that point and mentors was and still is Lee Stein, who wrote If You're Seeing This, It's Meant for You and Self Care, in addition to a book of poetry over COVID. She's so talented. She has been such an advocate for me. I will, praise her till the livelong day. And I reached out to her and I was like, I'm really struggling with plot. This is what I have. Can you help me? And I knew that I wanted to go out to this specific team at CAA because of who they represented and because I had these adaptation goals. And so I worked with her to get 3 chapters done and kind of the rest of the story like cast out for 3 months. And then once I had that in shape, I reached out to that team at CAA. They agreed to represent me, which was a signal that like I am a good fiction writer. Like, I know what I'm doing. I'm not Delulu. And then from then on, I had to write the rest of the book. And I used a lot of sticky notes, a lot of Post-its. I had a whole wall dedicated, and I basically color coded each character and their arc. That's kind of how I write, as I think about every character and like, what is their journey through the book? What are they going through? So like Victoria had a journey, Alexis had a journey, Ethan had a journey. Um, and then I submitted it to my agents. They gave me feedback. They basically act as your editor until you actually have one. There were things that didn't make sense. There were things that didn't land. Your agents will give you feedback too and be like, we want you to change this. Like there's a very significant part of the book, the part of the book where Alexis and Gordon are at the restaurant, for anyone who's read it, and they wanted me to take that out. And I was like, no, this is like really important for Alexis's arc. Um, and you just go back and forth and then you're done. But for me, I think the most important thing is I would say as what really works in my process is giving myself a lot of breathing room between sprints. And I will say, as far as like my actual writing process, I need 5 hours of uninterrupted time. With my nonfiction book, I was able to do 2 hours at night or 2 hours in the morning and squeeze it in. With fiction, I need like 5 hours, 12 to 5 p.m. or 10 a.m. to whatever 5 hours out is from that. I can't do mental math. And I need that, or else it's not getting done. And I also set word count goals for myself. So in January of 2023 through the end of that year, I had to get 65,000 words done, and I broke that down by daily goals.
That's awesome. No, I love how it's like a combination of getting help where you need it, getting structure, like, but also the bouts of inspiration where you're on that flight and you're like, it is here. I know what this
Yeah,
is. And so it's cool to see that kind of mix of both the structure and then also that inspiration. One of the things that I think is like really stood out to me was like just how beautiful the book cover was, just how
thank
beautiful
you.
like all the website is. I was just really, really like floored by how well done this was. And I also noticed that you are one of the first self-published books that Reese Witherspoon's book club was championing on the podcast. And so I'm curious, like, what do you feel like was kind of like your approach to self-publishing? Because I know in the beginning you were talking about wanting to elevate it. When you knew that you wanted to like bet on yourself and put yourself and your book out there and like stand behind it, like what were the decisions that you're like, this is a non-negotiable? I want this for the cover. I want to do this photo shoot, or like what was it like? And I would love for you to walk us through kind of like that part of the process because that's such a mystery to so many people who are listening right now.
Totally. And thank you for the compliment on the cover. My graphic design partner and creative direction partner, Allison Agosto, is unbelievable. And the photographer, Ava Czar, also directed the movie trailer with me that I'm sure I'll talk about or we'll get to. So massive credit to them because it wouldn't have happened without them. So at the tippy top of deciding that I wanted to self-publish, I mean, my background is in marketing and brand building and growth, and I know the space because I'm friends with authors. I read a lot, and I knew that kind of publishing and the space in general has moved to this more kind of cultural branded lifestyle space. And my first book I designed with my own graphic designer, even though it was published by Abrams, and it has that like coffee table look feel to it. And I believe that books are like cherished objects. That's number one. Two, with where the market was going, with books having this more kind of cultural lifestyle statusy feel, I knew that the book had to have a brand world. It had to have an experience. And I also know that I'm not good at visuals, candidly. Like I'm a great copywriter. I'm really good when it comes to brand positioning. I'm good at like selecting amongst visual options when they're presented to me, but I am not a designer. I am not a graphic designer. And so I had worked with Allison on other accounts, on other clients, and I admire her work so much. We work so well together. And so I knew that I wanted her to help me with visual direction because that's a weakness of mine, but I knew that it was really critical to this book standing out in the market and for my goal of elevating self-publishing to happen. And then Ava Czar, who is a longtime creative partner of mine, we've done photo shoots together, again, for brands and clients. I've long admired her work. I knew that I wanted to tap her for the editorial photography that's on the site. I knew I wanted like some sort of raw photography for the book cover. And I knew I wanted to do this movie trailer that's available on my Instagram, to immerse my potential readers in the world of the Rays. And again, because I had this goal of adaptation, I just kept thinking, like, how do I show people what the Rays could be if it was more than a book? And so from the beginning, I basically reached out to Allison and I was like, I have this crazy idea. I'm self-publishing my book. I need a website. I need a book cover. I need like all these things designed. I need an Instagram. Like, can I tell you what I'm thinking and what I'm looking for? And then I put a mood board together of like the vibe, which includes, other book covers. Like A Little Life book cover was inspo for this, if you know the book A Little Life. Um, other album covers, other just random images on Pinterest. And then I hand it over to Allison. I kind of like talk and hand wave. And then she presents me with like, these are three potential overall directions for the book cover and for like the feel of this project. Which one really resonates for you? And then we take it from there. And then with Ava, it was very similar, where I had been talking to her about the Rays since I started working on it. Like, that's how close friends we were. And so as soon as I was like, hey, I want to do this with you, she was like, yeah, let's go. Like, I took her out to dinner and we were just off to the races. And so she really understood the tone of the book. She loved the book. She read it. And we just would have meetings and be like, what is the photo shoot? She would send me American Apparel ads from many years ago, from decades ago, and be like, I feel like, the character announcements on Instagram should kind of feel like this. What do you think? And so it's very collaborative. But I think the most important thing is like, I know what I'm not good at. And I'm good at like kind of thirsting over people that are good at what they do and just asking them like, hey, do you want to do this with me? And hoping and praying that they'll say yes. And I got very lucky that the people I was most excited to work with did want to work with me. And then that brand world extended into like the brand, like the PR shipments we sent to influencers and TikTokers and Substackers. And it extended into like the party, like the book launch party I did and how that looked and felt. So yeah, the brand world was very collaborative. I really could not have done it without Ava and Allison because my brain works that way in some areas, but in a lot of areas, I need that type of support from other people.
Yeah. No, I love how you're kind of painting the entirety of like the book process, like not just as like this solitary act, as something that you have to do by yourself every single day, but like as a kind of a collaborative endeavor of like looking to your community for not only help, but also almost as co-creators and helping to refine and bring your vision to life. And I think that's really exciting, is to kind of like see those different things and how that all kind of came together. I would love to hear a little bit more about like the movie trailer and like I love how you saw a goal of adaptation and wanting to like kind of expand the brand world. What was it like to put together a movie trailer and what was that experience like?
Honestly, it was so fun. It was like the most fun I had last year. But again, a big lesson. And like, there are things I know how to do and things I don't know how to do. I have produced so many brand photo shoots. Doing something like this was a completely different beast. So I'm very lucky again in that connecting with Ava Czar, who directed the photo for the cover and planned that photo shoot. She has done so many commercials for beauty brands. She has done so many like creative narrative things on the side. And so when we were talking through the movie trailer, she's like, okay, there's this amazing producer, Sophia, I think you should meet. I think she'd probably want to do it. There's this DP, Yurika, who I've worked with before. I think her style is perfect. Let's see if she wants to get involved. So by, tapping Ava, she opened me up to her network to have the people that I needed for the trailer. And then me and Ava storyboarded the trailer together. So she read the book and we sat down in her apartment and we're like, okay, what are the most essential parts of the trailer? What are the most kind of visually compelling things from the book, but also what can we execute within my limited budget? Like, she's like, we have to do like this restaurant scene. Like, but do we have a restaurant? I'm like, oh, my friend Lula owns a restaurant. Let me see if I can get the restaurant. Like, we want, Ethan and Alexis fighting on the rooftop. Do we have a rooftop? I'm like, my apartment has a rooftop. We're gonna sneak into the rooftop. Like you're kind of just puzzle piecing everything together. And then I casted the cast for it through TikTok and Backstage. And I think one of the biggest wins there was getting Sophia LaCourte, who is like a very controversial TikTok star, to play Darcy in the trailer. I think it really helped people understand who Darcy was because it's kind of that meta casting when like, you know, Patrick Schwarzenegger was cast as a Nepo baby, like as a Nepo baby in The White Lotus. That's kind of how Sophia LaCourte as Darcy felt, where like Darcy is this elusive, mysterious, like stunning redhead. And, Sophia LaCourte really fit the bill. So that was just happenstance. I posted a bunch of TikToks being like, hey, New York, I'm casting this thing. Like, this is what the story's about. You can apply here. And we were in auditions for 4 straight days, all on Zoom from like 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. And I literally felt like Martin Scorsese. It's like, this is like a really low budget, like thing, but people really wanted to do it. And that again was signal that I don't know, that the raise was like special and worth bringing to market. And then we edited with this amazing editing partner named Modern Post with Danielle at Modern Post. And that was so fun. We like went into the editing bay and we're all just bouncing ideas off of each other. Like, how does this open? And then I made the music for it. I have been producing music since I was young, and I have a producing partner that was originally in Bed-Stuy, moved to North Carolina. So I flew to North Carolina for 3 days and I was like, we have to make a song for this trailer. But to your point earlier, it was such a really collaborative effort with like all my creative friends that I love and have either worked with before or like was just so lucky to work with on this project. And it did exactly what I wanted. It took the raise and gave people a sense of what this could be if it was, beyond the pages that I had written.
I love that. And I think that a lot of writers and creators, there's a lot of fear that comes with marketing. And hearing you talk about it, like, I love the way that you look at book marketing as an extension of the world, is what you'd use. I thought that was a really great way to phrase it, of like,
Yeah.
you're building out more of the brand world. You're not just like, here, buy my book. And I think that
Yeah.
that's so cool that you turned it into this like extension of storytelling and creativity. And I think that there's a lot of people who are listening now that also want to put their books out there, and many of whom also want to self-publish. What kind of advice would you give people who are wanting to just like bet on themselves and put their book out there and either self-publish or find more creative ways to get their traditionally published books out there as well?
It's such a good question. And honestly, I was reflecting on this myself, like coming into the new year. I think that it's like, how do I explain this? It's like this self-fulfilling prophecy and like this self-sustaining loop. So I started the year last year publicly being like, I'm going to elevate self-publishing. I'm going to market my book in a really big, exciting way. And it was driven a bit by spite. And like you said, publishers said they didn't know how to market this book. I know how to market this book. So watch me. Um, but I think by really assuming this identity of someone that like is creative and has a vision and is going to elevate self-publishing and like putting that out there, it gave me no other choice. Like I had to then move forward every day as someone that was going to do those things. And so I think and I didn't have the answer every day. Like I'll give a specific example and then I'll go back to answering the question. One of the most effective things in getting buzz for the book in that helped me get on Therese Witherspoon's podcast that got sales for the book was I had this like viral marketing campaign from the Raises TikTok account where I had characters like doing POV style content at Darcy's funeral when we were filming it for the trailer, or like on the rooftop as Ethan or Alexis in the middle of the fight. And I won't explain the specific videos, but I captured that content like in the heat of the moment, reactively, impulsively when we were on set. I hadn't planned those like super in advance, what they were going to be. I was just like, I'm paying to be on set with these with these actors. I should get as much content as I can. And then I figured out how to use it later. But I think what I'm trying to say is, like, you may not know exactly what your, like, creative way of marketing your self-published book is, or, like, your creative way of marketing your traditionally published book is. But I think just assuming the identity of someone that does creative marketing things, it like puts you in the mindset of finding the opportunities and like and them coming to you. It's kind of like how I think about when I have breaks in between my like big writing sprints, and ideas come to me in the breaks when I'm on a walk or I'm in the shower. And I'm sure a lot of writers can relate to this. It's like those are coming to you because you're in the middle of writing a book. You know, if you weren't in the middle of writing a book, those things wouldn't come to you. So you kind of have to do the same thing with marketing and with like putting yourself out there. You have to identify as someone that is comfortable marketing and is comfortable putting yourself out there and is comfortable coming up with crazy creative ideas. And then you have to take the baby steps, like the 6 baby steps to like do your first one and see what happens. Like and then it's following through on the execution stuff. And some things aren't going to work. Like there's a lot of things I did that flopped and I realized they flopped quickly and I stopped doing them. But identifying as someone like every day that like does creative marketing things to get my book noticed, I think that is what's going to help, like letting the ideas come to you and then like letting yourself validate the ideas and then letting yourself actually execute on the ideas.
I love that. And I love that highlight of like kind of focus on the identity, your identity first, and then kind of put it into practice. And I think that's
Yeah.
great. So I have a few more questions to you, but for anybody who's listening, if you have questions for Ali and you want to drop them in the chat, we may be able to get to them. So feel free to drop those in. And so I would love to answer your questions because I think that The Raise is just such a beautifully put together book, both in the book itself and then the marketing as well. One of the things that I talk about a lot and I'm curious about with you is that when I'm talking to book marketers or authors, often I'll hear from them something that surprised them about the book marketing process, whether it's, oh, I didn't realize that doing this was actually the thing that would get me the most book sales, or I thought this would work really well, but it didn't. Or, is there anything kind of surprising that was really like a new finding for you in the marketing process?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say I'll say if it's okay in the self-publishing process in
Yeah.
general. So, when you're working with a traditional publisher, they're a godsend. They handle everything. Like, they handle, like, getting you your ISBN number. They handle, like, getting the book physically made. They handle getting you up on Amazon. They handle getting you up on Ingram. They handle getting you up on every platform. They handle getting you distribution. Like, I mean, it's beautiful in a way. Like, all you have to do is, like, write your book, and, of course, market your book, which is why, there are so many Substackers that write Substack specifically about, like, how to successfully market your book, right? It's this whole new era of, like, authors having to be creators, so I won't minimize that, but I really do wanna double click on how much traditional publishers do. Um, and I learned this the hard way because with self-publishing, you're basically figuring all of that out yourself, and you can either take it all on yourself and figure out all those different puzzle pieces, and kind of become an expert in all those different, like, operational bits, or you can outsource and hire a company, like a third party, to do it for you. And I outsourced and I hired a company to do it for me. And that is something I don't think I would do again because it it didn't go well. It was like it is it basically it became a second kind of full-time job besides marketing the book, overseeing that vendor and correcting their mistakes and dealing with a lot of slip ups. And I think it's really difficult when you're kind of paying for someone to do a job that, like, they're doing rinse and repeat for a lot of self-published authors, but you are trying to elevate self-publishing. There's just kind of like a difference in, like, what their standard is of what they're doing versus what you're trying to do and what your standard is of doing. And so I think what really surprised me, if I'm being honest, is like for them, it's a business. And for authors, for all of us here, like what we're doing is deeply personal to us. And it is reflective of our quality bar and our standard. And so if there's typos, if there's formatting issues, if something's being done late, like it's a reflection of who we are, because that's what our art is, that's what our work is. And to encounter vendors in this industry that like don't see authors that way, where they're just like taking your money, doing a job, they get you something, everything's it's there's just kind of that gap in understanding. And I think for me, because I also am a vendor, like I'm a consultant that gets paid to work with brands. I was a founder. Like I take my clients and their work and how everything I do is a reflection of them. Like I understand that. And so working in an industry where you think that connection would be obvious, that not being obvious, and having to deal with the ramifications of that was like really surprising. And I think there needs to be a lot more transparency on like who those third party vendors are, if they're good, if they're bad, because there's a lot of scamminess and just a lot of like bad actors for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there's a lot of kind of like different kind of landmines to explore, both in terms of like any part of the author journey, but yeah, when you're trying to figure out who to rely on and who to
Yeah.
trust when you're doing this stuff, like it's really crazy. But I think that like the finished product that you have like is gorgeous. I think you should be so proud of like the marketing campaign, the book
Thank you.
itself. Like what a lovely novel, and everybody who anybody who is interested in thrillers should pick this up.
Thank
I want
you.
to end on kind of hearing a little bit about like you run a fantastic Substack at New Motives. Would
Yeah.
love for you to share a little bit about like what you write about there, and then also where people can buy the Raised and where people can find you and support you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I like to say New Motives is where business, pop culture, gender, and the personal all intersect. I think a lot of the themes that come to life in the Rays, they're around codependence, ambition, and like the millennial grind and the millennial mindset. And so those themes just get like a second life in New Motives, but tied to like common or current events. So an example of something I would write in New Motives is like, the modern girl is crippled by aspiration, and I'm one of them. So as we start to see people listing like, their top picks on Substack of like 2025 and all the expensive things that they bought, or it's a new thing, on social to be like, if I won the lottery, there would be signs and posting like all these really expensive things that you wish you could buy, but you can't. Just this obsession with like wealth and like really expensive things, turning us all into people that are constantly aspiring and not being grateful for what we have in the now. Like, why is that happening? When is that going to end? That's an example of a piece. Another piece that I write about is like Shop My, right? Like everyone's on Shop My, everyone's linking to Shop My. I also was a retail technology founder. And so I'm able to kind of demystify technologies like that a lot of people start seeing every day and like clicking through and like noticing, but maybe they don't understand like why has this technology become so popular? Why is everyone using it? So taking something that might seem really complex and turning it into something really digestible. But yeah, it's usually stuff that people are starting to like see everywhere or notice all the time. So you can subscribe to New Motives if that sounds interesting. And then when it comes to the Raise, you can buy it on Amazon. Please buy it on Amazon, because then I can track everything. And you can follow me on Instagram at Ali Kriegs. I would give you my TikTok handle, but it's too complicated and like a lot of that content's also kind of embarrassing. But yeah, I like had so much fun last year, and Amy, thank you so much for this opportunity. I love writers. I love authors. And if you have any specific questions for me, please message me on Substack. I may not get to you like right away, but I will get back to you. I will chip away at them, and I would love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ali, for taking the time. I know you're off and in the busy with so much to write and so much to do. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. And again, excellent book, The Raise. Everyone should pick it up and follow you on New Motives here on Substack. Have a wonderful rest of your day and start to 2026. And thanks to everybody who tuned in.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.